Hey, it is 7 o'clock, and let's go ahead and get started here. Again, I appreciate everybody joining us tonight. We have got something I hope, I believe will be very informative. I know that in this time of all the things that we're doing and piling everything on top, I know it's kind of hard to kind of keep track of everything, everyone's needs, or our needs, the kids' needs, and how to deal with those things. And I really appreciate Andrew coming in and talking with us tonight, giving us some kind of what I believe is going to be some really solid and useful information that we're going to be able to use. So I'm looking forward to tonight. I see we got a lot of people in here tonight, so if we can, let's just take a quick minute, introduce yourself, who you are, where you're from, what you teach, and just tonight, why don't we give us the name of the celebrity, the one celebrity you want to be quarantined with. If you had to be quarantined with one celebrity, who would it be? All right. Abby, do you want to start us off?
Okay, there we go. I was trying to get my mic on.
That's right.
I'm Abby Law Allen. I am a guidance counselor at South Spencer Middle School. And you did not give me enough time to come up with a celebrity, so I don't know.
We'll come back to you. You can throw that into the chat later on for
okay.
us. Amanda, how about you? No, Amanda. How about Amy? Oh, there's Amanda.
Hi, sorry.
Okay.
Amanda Gonzalez. I teach at Pike County School Corporation, 3rd grade.
Awesome. And your celebrity quarantine partner?
I
Gotta stay out.
I don't know. I haven't came up with one yet.
Come on.
Okay.
People,
All
you
right.
guys have to stay out and be quiet.
Amy, how about you?
I'm Amy. Sorry, we have two devices on. I'm Amy, and I am with 5 Star, and I would be quarantined with Jeff Goldblum.
Good choice. Good choice. All right, Andrea, how about you?
I'm Andrea Wills. I teach at Washington Catholic. I teach social studies 6th grade through seniors. Quarantined. I don't know. Probably a musician of some sort. I can't think right now.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Beth, how about you?
Hi, I'm Beth Walter. I teach math at Mount Vernon High School, Mount Vernon, Indiana, and Bruce Willis, I guess.
At least you be safe, right? All right, Caleb, how about you?
I'm Caleb Gravemeyer. I teach 7th grade science at South Spencer Middle School, and I live alone, so I'm kind of used to that, so I'm all right not having those celebrities.
All right. Chris Ashworth.
Yes, I'm Chris Ashworth. I am the band director at Pike Central Middle School and High School. The celebrity that I would be quarantined with would probably be Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. I think he's hilarious, and he's got a pretty sweet home gym.
Sweet. He was actually on one of my lists there. So, Chris Combs, how about you?
Hey, I'm Chris Combs. I teach middle school computer science at Helford Park in Evansville. And I would probably have to say Jackie Chan.
Just don't make him mad, right?
Yeah.
Douglas.
Hey, how you doing? This is Doug Blair. I teach PE and health at Mount Vernon Junior High School. And if I'm going to be quarantined, it's got to be with Kevin Hart.
Yeah, always a good laugh there, I bet. Excellent. Farrell Bunner's with us tonight.
Hey, I'm Farrell Bunner. I'm one of the assistant principals at Wrights High School. I'm not sure what the premise of the question is. I joined in late. Can you help me out, Mr. Wells?
Your celebrity quarantine.
Oh, my God.
If you had to be quarantined with a celebrity, it would be?
Liam Nielsen.
There you go. Good job. Yeah. All right, JD.
Hi, I'm JD Wigley. I'm an instructional designer at USI, former 6th grade science teacher. And I honestly have no idea who I'd be quarantined with.
All
I
right.
kind of like being by myself, so you know.
Yeah, there you go. Joanne, how about you? You there, Joanne? Oh, there
Yeah,
she is. There she
this is Joanne Benjamin. I'm a special ed teacher at Rockport Elementary. And if I had to be quarantined, it would be with either a comedian or a singer.
All right, good job. Jody, how about you? Do we have Jody?
Okay, here I am.
There you
My
are.
name is Jody Pickett. I am the reading specialist for Petersburg Elementary Pike County School Corporation.
Excellent. And John, how about you, Hurley?
There we go. John Hurley, I teach career and technical education at South Spencer. I'm going to play this one safe and just say I'd be quarantined with my wife, Jessie.
There you go. Celebrity. Julie, how about you?
Hi, Julie Kissinger. I'm the e-learning coach in Mount Vernon School District, and I'm going to say Chip and Joanna Gaines because they could redo my house and cook for me.
There you go. There you go. That's a twofer. Karen, how about you?
I am Karen Upshaw. I teach third grade at Farmersville in Mount Vernon, and I'm not sure about my celebrity.
Okay. Okay. Carrie?
Hi guys, I'm Carrie Sensenbrenner from Evansville. I teach sixth grade science at Tompkins, and I would pick Ellen DeGeneres. I think she'd be a lot of fun.
There you go. Kevin Witten, please. Oh, did we lose Kevin? How about Kim? Kim? There she is.
Sorry, I couldn't turn my microphone on.
That's
Right
okay.
now, my name's Kim Merrick. I'm from Mount Vernon High School. I'm the life skills special education teacher. And right now, I'd love Caesar Milan or Brian McMillan just to help me with my son's puppy.
There you go. All right. And is this Corin December? Did I say that right? Corin? How about Krista? Krista Cartwright.
Krista Cartwright. I teach fourth grade at Mars at Mount Vernon, and I don't know, maybe Reese Witherspoon for just some fun time.
There you go. Margaret. Margaret. All right. How about Mariana?
Hi, I'm Mariana Arney, and I teach at Petersburg Elementary. I am kindergarten through second grade special education, and I would definitely do Joanna Gaines. I've always looked up to her, and I think that, like one of the other people said, she would also be able to do my house and give me ideas. So that's why I would pick her.
Excellent choice. Mary Eagley.
Hi, Mary Fagley. I'm from Mount Vernon High School. I teach English. I'm going to say somebody that you probably all maybe are familiar with, who's kind of not really a celebrity, but sort of she is to me, is Leslie Fisher.
On a webinar?
Because I've already spent, I don't know how many different webinars with Leslie Fisher, so I already feel like I'm in quarantine with her. And if you know her and you've seen her present, she's hilarious, and she always has all these cool gadgets and teaches me a lot of things, so I think she would be a great choice.
Awesome.
And
Excellent.
we have wine here, and I think
Hey. I finally got muted.
Okay. Okay.
I go by Peg. It comes up Margaret, but no one calls me Margaret except for unless I'm in trouble.
Okay.
So I hope I'm not in trouble.
No. Not at all.
Probably Jason Momoa or Chris Hemsworth because
Wow.
I
There
can
you
get a lot
go.
of stuff done in the house that needs to be fixed up.
Right, there you go. Phil, how about you?
Hey, it's Phil Klaus with Pike County School Corporation, Director of Technology. If I was stuck with one star, it would have to be the William Bill Stein to keep me entertained.
There you go. There you go.
We can make that happen.
There you go. All right. How about Raina?
Okay, I had to unmute myself.
You're all right.
I teach algebra at Princeton Community High School, and I'm not real big on like movie stars and stuff, but since we're going the Chip and Joanna way, we live in an old house in Mount Carmel, Illinois, so I would take the This Old House team to fix up my house. That would be
excellent. Cool. Excellent. And Sarah Burns.
Hey, I am Sarah Burns. Can you see me? Yes. Okay. Good. Yeah. I am the Social Studies Department Chair at Wrights High School. And you guys, it's a no-brainer on the celebrity thing. I knew mine at the very beginning. It's Matt Damon, no contest. And it's not because he can fix anything. I just like to spend time with him.
There you go. There you go. Hey, and I'm John Wells. I teach English at Wrights. And most of you probably would believe, you probably expect me to say be locked in here with Taylor Swift. But I think Kenny Chesney, I think us sitting out in the garage, he can teach me how to play guitar, right? Hey, let's introduce our guest tonight. I know it says Ruth, but Andrew, give us a little bit about yourself and who's your celebrity?
So my name is Andrew Martin. I am a therapist at Lampion Center in Evansville, Indiana. Well, part of what I do, I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I've got a master's degree in social work. Part of what I do is individual, family, marriage counseling, sort of all the in between. I teach a parenting class while I'm there. Just in general, I get asked to do lots of different things there. As far as my celebrity goes, I kind of got the easy way out, I think, because I got to go last. My initial reaction was going to be Samuel L. Jackson to help me with these kids, and also to kind of pick his brain on all the movies that he's done. But some of these musicians have kind of given me some good ideas. Something like the piano guys or somebody that could help entertain these kids maybe a little bit while we're here.
Awesome. So. Good choice. Hey, so let's go ahead and get started, and I'm going to turn it over to Andrew here. If you have a question while he's kind of talking there, you can throw it in the chat, and we'll make sure to circle back around and get to that. And then we'll kind of open it up for some discussion as we go. So, Andrew, why don't you give us a little something to work with tonight?
Okay, so I hope most of you got the handout. I sent that as kind of a reply all to everybody. And I knew I'd be talking to a room full of educators, so I put my source on there as well. Sort of where that came from. So this actually came out of there's a parenting class that I teach, and the parenting class that we teach at Lampion Center, the only way to get in it is we have people that are referred by the Department of Child Services to be in there. And one of the first times I went through and presented that, I've been doing that about 4.5 years now or so. One of the exercises that we did was this exercise about personal needs. We called the SPICES exercise. The SPICES actually it's an acronym that's used for those 6 different areas of personal need. And the more that I was presenting that with the participants in the class, the more it really sort of struck a chord with me personally. Like, yes, this is something that we really kind of deal with. And I found myself using it more in therapy, even giving it out to family and friends, and really just sort of dispersing it all over the place. It's something that's very universal. I know that when I talked to John Wells about possibly doing this, he said, something that could be helpful, about, this time of need where a lot of people have different things that they're being challenged with in different ways. And so I just thought this was a great exercise. I mean, it's something that's very universal for educators, for therapists, for parents, for kids, for everybody. I mean, when we talk about personal needs, that they're sort of this great equalizer for all of us, but how we meet those can be very different based upon what's going on and what's around us. on that particular, worksheet, if anybody has that pulled up, I'll give you kind of the quick rundown. So the 6 different areas of need are social, physical, intellectual, creative, emotional, and spiritual. And when we talk about those needs, I mean, basically, meaning everybody kind of being in quarantine and not working or not, going to work and things like that. I mean, 2 months ago, if we had done this exercise, it would look a whole lot different than what it looks today. The needs are the same, but how we get those needs met is so much different based upon sort of where we are right now. I mean, hopefully after the quarantine's over, how we meet those needs will be a lot different. When we're back out in the world and we're able to be social again, and we're able to sort of do some of those things. One of the things with that exercise as well, if you're kind of following along with it, is it's different ways that people sort of rate that as far as how you value it and how you practice it. And one of the things that I really like about this is it's something that's so universal. You can use it over and over and over again. I find myself even in my own personal life, when things get a little bit off or things feel really stressed out or I feel really overwhelmed, it's a great way to kind of go back to this and look at, okay, what is this area of need maybe for me that needs to be addressed more, that I really need to be able to focus on. The other thing that you'll kind of find as we kind of walk through this or step through this just a little bit is that some of the things that we do actually meet across a lot of different needs. So sometimes those activities, some of those things that we do to sort of help take care of us, actually, kind of help in multiple ways. And so if we're limited by time or we're limited by resources, that's a good way to sort of kind of step through that and kind of think about that. And so one of the big things, so let's just kind of break them down, and I'll let you guys each think about them. If you've got it there and you want to sort of jot something down to think about this for yourself, this is a great way to sort of do this. As I was also thinking about this too, is when we talk about like your students or the kids that you're reaching out to, because he had initially had asked about kids maybe that might be in trouble. And it's a great simple way to sort of approach this. I mean, it's a great way to sort of assess maybe there's something that can be done a little bit different, and also kind of give them some ideas about how they can sort of maybe work through some of those things themselves. So just kind of taking these pretty quickly. The first need that we have, that S need, the social need. So when we think about that, it's thinking about how do we sort of connect with others. Prior to all of this happening, one of the ways that we maybe met that social need was just going to school, being around, the administrators, being around kids, being around the other teachers, the other people that we're with. For some people, it can be, going to church or being involved in certain clubs or activities, or doing all of these sort of things that sort of connect us to other people, spending time with our friends, spending time with our family, calling people up. One of the ways that we might meet that now is sort of what we're doing right here, right now. Everybody's sort of together and we're all, sort of opened up to having some of this FaceTime with one another, looking at ways to make phone calls, looking at ways to doing like Zoom meetings and different things like that. There's all kinds of ways in which we sort of meet that social need. And also everybody has a certain different level of that. I heard somebody mention earlier that, that they're kind of home alone. And so they don't maybe necessarily need somebody in quarantine with them, that their social need might look a little bit different than somebody who say maybe prefers to be out on the go a lot. They're always wanting to do things. They're always wanting to sort of stay in connection with people. This might really be something that's very difficult for them, that they really, feel like they're kind of missing that at this time, and sort of looking for different ways to sort of do that. I hope maybe that's kind of given some good ideas on some of that just a little bit. The next need that we talk about, so the first S is social. The next need, the P need, is the physical need. And so when we look at the physical need, we're looking at basically like our own physical specimen, our own physical body. How are we taking care of this vessel that is us? That can include things like our sleep, our exercise, our diet, our hygiene. Are we getting up and taking a shower every day? For some people with hairdressers and things like that being closed, maybe not being able to get their hair done is something that really sort of, takes care of that just a little bit. It could be, just basically how are we taking care of ourselves physically? How are we doing some of those things? It could be as much as getting up and finding some exercise to do around the house, walking up and down the stairs, anything like making sure that you're taking your medicine, making sure that you're keeping up with those things that sort of take care of your physical body, and kind of where that is and what that looks like. I know for a lot of people, I've talked to them about keeping up with routines. If you're getting up every day, getting up and getting out of your pajamas and actually putting on some real clothes or even some comfy clothes is a great way to just, kind of transition yourself out of like, I'm asleep to now I'm kind of like in a work mode, or I'm in a mode where I need to do that. It's kind of something that's sort of inherently built into our days as we get into our routine, as we're able to sort of travel around a little bit. That's something that gets a little bit lost. And so making sure that we have to sort of take care of some of those things and thinking about ourselves physically. The next need, the I need, is the intellectual need. And that's really where all of you guys are really talking about, like, education. That is so important. And kids, they still need that in this time. That I need is really about how do we stimulate our mind? How do we keep ourselves thinking and growing and doing things like that? It's a matter of keeping up with those keeping up with assignments, or trying to encourage daily reading. Sometimes it can be, when I talk to people about that intellectual need, it can be, changing the programming that you're watching, throwing in a documentary in there every now and again, or listening to a podcast, or finding different ways to sort of stimulate your mind through crossword puzzles, through Sudoku puzzles, things like that are constantly sort of stimulating the mind and kind of challenging us to sort of grow and think about things in new and different ways. The next need that we talk about is the C need, which is the creative need. And so when we talk about the creative need, one of the things I always kind of emphasize with people is this one, unlike a lot of the others, is one where we really give ourselves an opportunity to make mistakes. It's an opportunity where we sort of try new things. There's a whole list of ways in which we sort of meet that creative need. I heard a band director on here earlier. I mean, there's music, there's playing music, there's listening to music. There's sewing, cooking, cleaning, crafting. There is so many different ways in which we sort of meet that. It can be drawing, writing, painting, scrapbooking, woodwork, just all kinds of ways. I think, and I kind of mentioned earlier how there's a lot of times a bleed over between needs. I think, the creative need really sort of moves in also with the intellectual need. A lot of times it can be things that we're learning. It's a matter of like, I'm really excited maybe about cooking and trying new recipes or trying new things. And now I'm exercising that creative need because I'm going out and I'm doing it. I'm practicing it. I'm actually trying some of those things that I'm learning about, and also thinking about how important that is. Again, like I said, it ties in with that intellectual because it's so much more that we kind of find ways to do that. The next need, which is sometimes a little bit harder for people, is the E need, which is the emotional need. I think the emotional need, more so than all of the rest, really has arms and legs in so many of the other needs as well. It's not necessarily something that's entirely standalone. I mean, it can be. I mean, some of the things that we do for that emotional need is sort of like, how do we reach out? How do we connect? How do we, if we're having a bad day, do we call up a friend? Somebody mentioned with some comedy earlier, if we're having a down day, do we go and watch some comedy movies? Like a romantic comedy or something with Kevin Hart in it. We also look at, sometimes it can be a matter of like, for sometimes people, it's like, I just need something filled with drama. I need something to sort of cry, to sort of emotionally connect to. Sometimes we see that emotional need really worked out in a physical sense. People that really really have a hard time, dealing with anger or dealing with frustration or something like that, using exercise as a way to go work that out, or finding a way to sort of put that into motion a little bit. I know sometimes even when I talk with certain adults, it's like, getting up and cleaning my house, or being productive, or doing something when I feel angry or when I feel frustrated. Sort of as a way of sort of connecting those emotions, but also being aware of them, it's kind of acknowledging that, sometimes it's a hard day, and yes, just giving yourself credit to say it's a hard day. This is something that I'm really struggling. This is something that is really challenging for me, as a way to kind of think about that. The last need, the last S that we're going to talk about is the spiritual need. And so I want to be very clear when I talk about the spiritual need, I'm not talking about religion. Spirituality doesn't equal religion. For a lot of people, they do find religious outlets as a way of expressing or connecting or meeting that spiritual need, but it does not have to mean the same thing. When we talk about that spiritual need, what it really is it's about something connecting bigger than ourselves, outside of ourselves. Sometimes people will tell me that they do meet that through organized religion, whether that's Christianity or Judaism or Islam or whatever they prefer to practice. Some people, it's not necessarily a religion, but their own personal routines around things like prayer or reading sacred scripture. I have a lot of people that tell me that their spiritual need is met by being outside, being in nature, watching nature, going out and taking a walk, by finding different ways to sort of connect outside of that. Sometimes people even talk about that spiritual need being met within a group or an activity. There are certain, groups that like, AA, for example, which I'm hoping that we don't have kids in AA. But there's an element of spirituality to that, for a lot of people, about this belief in a higher power or how that's talked about. Again, there's so many of these sort of opportunities that really sort of overlap with one another as we think about that. Maybe as you were kind of going down through this, kind of keeping your own list, I hope that maybe it was kind of sparking some ideas about ways in which you can sort of meet those for yourselves, but then also ways to kind of be able to kind of filter that out and be able to talk with maybe somebody else that's kind of needing that. It can be a kid, it can be a coworker, it can be a parent, it can be anybody. I mean, that's the thing that I love about something like this, is that it's so universal. But it's also so different because we all have them, but we all meet them in different ways. I mean, if I was to take a poll of everybody here and ask, what's one thing that you got from each one of those areas, we might get some overlap, but we might also get some things that are very different and very unique to each one of you.
Excellent. And I know that was part of it. It's funny you say that, because that's part of what this is tonight. It is to get that new information, to get something, but it's also to connect with those, our peers, those people that we, every day we leaned on for information and stuff. And now we are kind of really disconnected from each other. So it really starts to bring, us back into connection with each other. I just want to turn it real quickly toward, if you think about these different areas, I mean, how do you suggest we approach a kid? We're communicating with a kid, or maybe his phone or email, whatever. I mean, how do you suggest we start that conversation about asking about some of these needs?
Yeah, and I think it can be very simple, very casual. Tell me about what are some of the things that you're doing to sort of occupy yourself? How are you spending your time? What are some of the things that you're doing? Or even kind of asking the opposite. What are some of the things that you feel like you're missing out on? I think sometimes it's a great way to just sort of ask, open-ended questions about, kind of gauging where people are in that moment.
And how do you know, is there a way to, and I know we talked a little bit about this the other night when we kind of were prepping this, but, what's the line between being engaged and concerned and being pushy?
Yeah. One of the things that I kind of thought about, and kind of in maybe how to answer that question is there's a thing in therapy, in one of the therapy modalities, that's called the rule of three. Okay. And what the rule of three is it's a way to sort of clue into something. And that what that means is that if you're talking with someone or you're noticing something that comes up once, twice, 3 times, that's something that you need to sort of clue into. There's something that you want to kind of tune into that a little bit and be able to ask about, even something as simple as, I've heard you mention this one thing a couple of times. Can you tell me a little bit about that, or what's going on with that? It's like sometimes, we kind of do that naturally, even as well with different people, but it's a way to sort of tune into that. I think, for some of you who have different students and you've already sort of seen them prior to this, you kind of maybe have a general sense a little bit at this point about who they are, maybe. I know that's hard to do when you've got tons of students, but for the most part, what is sort of in their nature, what is sort of in their character. And when we start to find those things that are the outliers, those things that seem a little bit different. That student that we maybe knew that was really chatty and is now very quiet and very reserved. What we're looking for is, and again, because there are so many differences, what we're looking for is, where is the change? Do we notice a change? Do we notice kind of a significant change where we want to maybe tune into that and say, ooh, I noticed something's a little bit off there.
But again, one of those things that and it's really not our job to diagnose necessarily, but
Sure.
It's just to be aware, right?
Yeah. And so part of that is when you talk about being aware, yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, I'm not looking at anybody here to be a therapist, but I mean, part of it is that out of genuine concern, that's where maybe you can kind of clue into that. I mean, and even sort of explore what to do there. One of the things I always tell people about, whenever it comes to help, so to speak, there's really sort of 4 different ways in which we kind of offer help sometimes. And what we need is sort of in a different way. Like the example that I use is, say you stumble upon someone who's lost in a cave. And the first way might be that you hear that person and they're lost, and you go to the end of the cave and you meet them and you yell in at them and you go, I hear you, I know that you're there, and I'm going to go get some help because I don't necessarily have all the resources to take care of this. So I'm going to go find somebody else and I'm going to bring them back and we're going to help you and we're going to sort of get you what you need sort of at that point. The second way that we can kind of offer that is that we hear that person and we offer advice. We stand at the edge of the cave and we kind of call them out. Can you come to me? Can you listen to me? We don't always necessarily know entirely what's going on the other end, but we offer something as a way of, kind of comfort, and I'm here and you can sort of come to me. The next way is that we sort of just rush in there. We just jump in, and that's never necessarily the best way to always want to approach it, because if we do that, we can sometimes find ourselves lost in that cave. We can find ourselves sort of having trouble with that. And the last way is really that we kind of tie ourselves off to something else that's sort of strong and true. And then we kind of ease our way into help, knowing that we can sort of come back out. So it's like being able to ask those questions of like, hey, I hear that you're really having trouble, but then I'm going to guide you back out to something else. I'm going to ground you maybe to something, that really, somebody else. Maybe it's counseling. Maybe it's connecting with your peer group. Maybe it's connecting, even maybe with a parent. I don't know what the bounds are of that, where you wouldn't necessarily want to get a parent involved, but also not necessarily always feeling like you have to take everything on yourself either.
Excellent. Hey, I just want to interject. First off, thank you everybody for coming. It is 7:30. I know that there is I think Amy's going to send out the feedback form and to get the PGG points correct. And JD is posting the recording of this on the website, correct? Yes. And if you want to leave, if you need to leave, don't feel like you have to stay. But if any of you want to continue to hang out for a while, we can continue the conversation a little bit. But again, I appreciate everybody joining in, and I hope you got a little bit of a little nugget of something to work with as you go on. Excellent. Thanks, guys, for joining. Hey, Andrew, I just want to, that idea of, now we talked a little bit about, how do you transfer this, like, from students to us, to our peers? Is it the same process to adults? Is it to our peer group? Is it the same, or is that process change a little bit?
Yeah, I think sometimes some of the language can sort of change. I think, part of it is, and one of the things we've heard a lot throughout this process is, you can never say, or you can never ask too many times, how are you doing? Are you doing okay? It doesn't have to be this full blown, oh my gosh, I see that there's something wrong with you. It can start out very casual, sort of at your own sort of comfort with some of those things. And again, with that student, it might be like, hey, tell me a little bit about what's going on with yourself. Tell me what you're having, that you're kind of dealing with in this moment. With some of that language, as you sort of describe that, you might have to break it down for them a little bit differently as you're talking about what some of those needs might mean. And again, and you also can kind of think about for yourself and holding in mind how that's going to look a lot different. for us as adults, how we're going to meet some of those needs might look very different than the way that the kiddos are meeting some of those things.
Mm-hmm. And what I'm just going to throw this over to Farrell or Sarah if they're still in here, because I know you guys have teams of people under you. Obviously, Farrell, you've got like a whole building basically under you. I mean, what does that process look like for you? I mean, is this, you know, how in front of this mind has that been for you guys?
Well, and so on my end through all this, like I'm looking through the lens of 1,214 kids that we need to make sure are safe, that they're fed, and that they're able to communicate with their teachers with that. What we're running into is kids that don't have the means to communicate electronically and trying to bridge that gap. But then also we're running into the issue of kids that just don't want to be contacted too. And I really appreciate, Andrew, what you said about it's, you know, you can never ask how are things going too many times with that. And I think that's an important point there. John, what are you looking for with this? So like it's 1,200 trying to whittle it down to those who absolutely need it. But at the same time, it all comes down to that one-on-one interaction that the teacher can have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and also too, I mean, you're probably also, I mean, again, not to put you on the spot necessarily, but you're probably also balancing that with, you know, you've got 100 faculty and staff and people in and out of our building, probably even more than 100, you know, so you're probably you got a foot in both worlds there.
And
yeah, so
go ahead. I was going to there too. I see kind of my role as being a little bit more with the staff side of things. You know, with my department, I've been spending a lot of time. I have students too, but I've really been focusing on teachers and how to support them best. So I was interested in your question, John, because I thought it was really good. But to speak a little bit more about adults' needs as well, I wouldn't mind to discuss that if you have any suggestions.
Yeah, Andrew, what do you think?
Well, I mean, one of the things I think, you know, like what you've got, that worksheet there is a great way to sort of approach that, you know. And a lot of times too, whenever I approach this with adults, especially as I sort of approach this in a therapy setting, which I know is a little bit different, I just say, you know, maybe I heard about this new thing, or I've got this thing that I heard this presentation this guy talked about the other day. It was really exciting, and it got me thinking about, you know, our own needs and sort of how we take care of those things. It doesn't have to necessarily personalize it. And that was one of the things I was really trying to sort of emphasize today. And the way that we talk about it is, again, it's kind of that universal. We're all in this together. And how are we meeting that? You know, some of the best ideas that I have ever heard from people on how they meet these things are from other people themselves. You know, every now and then I'll get something that's really creative and something that I didn't think about that will fit into one of those. And I'm like, yeah, sure enough, it absolutely does. Because those things, you know, while they are universal, they are sometimes very different in how we sort of meet some of those things. You know, and kind of just asking people to sort of think about that. You know, have you ever thought about your needs, or have you ever looked at them sort of in this way? You know, then, and that's kind of one of the things that I'm hearing a lot too. And a lot of the ways that people talk about being stressed out or being overly anxious or being overly worried, you know, I kind of weighed that through with a little bit. I wonder what's going on. I wonder what's, you know, kind of feeding some of that for people, or wonder what areas maybe could use a little bit of help. You know, and then also, you know, when I kind of walk through people with this on the front end, even when they maybe don't necessarily have to use them, it can also provide really concrete ways that when we start to get off, when we start to feel ourselves being off just a little bit, if we've got those things written down, we can go back to it. You know, we can kind of go back to that list and sort of say, yeah, these are the things that I can do that I wrote down at a time, maybe when I wasn't needing them.
So, Andrew, and just to kind of to build on what Sarah was asking. So let's say that I'm Zoom conferencing or WebExing in the EVSC with one of my fellow teachers. And I'm like, wow, you know, it's 1 o'clock and hey, you're still in your pajamas. You know, if I see a concern in one area, should that make me start to think a little bit more about those other areas? Is that kind of like that trigger moment, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, it very well could be. You know, and again, with your coworkers, again, kind of looking for that rule of three, looking for when you kind of notice something seems different. You know, when you start to see that, okay, their demeanor sort of changes a little bit. Maybe say it's somebody like myself, you know, around the office, I'm always a jokester. I am always, you know, making jokes and cracking jokes and doing different things like that. And when I come into my office and I'm not doing that, people around me are like, what the heck's going on? You know, what's up with you? You seem a little bit different, you know, and I think that's just a great question, you know, that if I think if somebody was having a bad day and it was kind of that element of concern, like, wow, I see that you seem really different right now. You know, is there something going on? Is there something that's happening there? You know, kind of a way to sort of kind of address that. You know, and I think very direct is a great way to sort of approach that a little bit.
Has anyone in the group here that's still with us, is anyone like you've questioned yourself? You're like, I think maybe I should ask. Have you had that moment when you've debated, and why were you debating that? Anybody had one of those moments lately in our distance learning, distance teaching? Has anybody had that moment? Go ahead. Somebody was getting ready to say something. Yeah, I don't know if I've really had that moment with while we've had, in my communications with these kids, but I'm wondering now if maybe I'm missing something, am I missing some little small thing that maybe should be like, I mean, there's a couple kids we haven't been able to get a hold of. We can't find them at all. I don't know if that should be, more of a concern to me.
So John, think about the length of those interactions that we're now having with our students. Before and even with our adult peers with that. If we walked out of a PLC meeting and we noticed that something was a little bit off, as we were leaving that meeting, that would probably be the time when we pull that colleague and say, hey, is everything okay? I noticed you're about to put your head down on the desk during that meeting. Or same thing with the classroom full of kids. When the kids are leaving, like, hey, I noticed you're a little bit off today. Please let me know if there's something I can do to help out. What's going on? What can we do? I think we don't have the luxury of time anymore like we did when we were face to face.
Right. That's a good point. I think that's a great point, especially, that may be only one interaction a week with some of these kids, if that.
I think kids do a good job too of, this is Carrie, from like a perspective of when you're in class and you can see something bubbling under the surface. Sometimes "are you okay" is just enough for that tear reaction, and to push the conversation. And it's like, hey, do you want to step outside in the hallway with me for a second? And they know that they've kind of been caught in that moment, but then they're also willing to open up, like they needed somebody to recognize it. When you send them an email like, I haven't heard from you, are you okay? They're locked down at that moment. Like they're not going to have that tear reaction. They're not going to open that door. They know you can't see them. And those walls are built back up really well when they're at home around the circumstance versus in the classroom. So I think it's so hard in this environment, even for kids I was close to, that now I know they're back at home and I'm worried about them, but they're not letting down those walls.
Well, let me throw this to Andrew then, because I know we touched on this. We touched on communications the other day, one of our other conversations. Andrew, do you think that it is harder for kids to express some of these needs because they're not in front of us? Like, are they unwilling to commit something to type, or, they're not going to call us? Maybe in the classroom, they will give us that sign that they need something. I think, a couple of people talked about that. Do you think that this allows them to have more space, or kind of forces them to have more space?
Absolutely, it does. Absolutely, it does. And one of the big things that we know about communication, I think it's pretty widely understood that the further removed you get from communication, the harder it is. Something that Farrell said earlier, and I agree with, and I saw that kind of come up in the caption. But what about the kids that we're not seeing? When we're having that face-to-face, it is so much easier. And there is so much of that element that is lost when you're not having that direct contact with people. I also think sometimes too, though, especially like with other colleagues and adults, maybe not with kids so much, but also knowing like who else that person stays in contact with. it might be if you can't kind of call that person out directly, has anybody talked to so-and-so lately? Has anybody checked in with them? Has anybody heard back from them? And that might be well, I haven't heard from them. I thought they maybe were talking to you, or I thought maybe they were talking to you. And so then kind of as a group, you kind of get some of those things as well. You can sort of, and again, like with your teens, you may kind of know who some of the people that they hang around with. Hey, has anybody talked to so-and-so lately? I haven't heard from them. And again, I don't know what the bounds are. I don't know what the boundaries are with teachers. So I may be way out of line by even sort of suggesting that because that's not my professional boundaries and I don't know entirely what they are. But also not necessarily knowing that, you don't have to be the only one to do that. I mean, you can handle and take care of what's immediately right there in front of you and try to do the best you can with it. But there are going to be times where when somebody shuts down, they can't give that back to you. So sort of finding other ways, if there is more of that face-to-face and that like a Zoom type meeting, again, you can sort of gauge those things a little bit differently than maybe not what you're always getting in emails or things like that.
Excellent. And then just because A, I know Farrell, and B, he's the resident administrator here. Is there, I mean, if I'm making a good, me as a classroom teacher, if I'm making that good faith effort and I come in and I say, wow, I've really got this concern, and I express that and it turns out to be nothing, I mean, what is the administrative response to that?
I'd rather it be nothing than it be something.
Mm-hmm.
Like 100%, like our social worker, just today, like she is going round and round with her caseload, doing teleconferencing, telemedicine, teletherapy type stuff with her caseload. And just today, she had a kid that it got further out than what she could help the kid with. And so then she had to refer the kid to another service with that. And it absolutely broke her heart. Because she knew that the number one thing she needed was to be in front of that kid in that exact moment. But then they had to create a safety for this kid and get things going there. But I would rather be safe than sorry in any of these situations. And if we so I was delivering homework to kids yesterday. Carrie Hudson and I both, and just that simple face-to-face acting, like being able to look the kid in the eye and say, I'm here for you. My number's in there. My email address is in this folder. If you need anything, you pick up that phone and you give me a call. And if that turns into a teacher calling in saying, hey, I haven't heard from this kid, or I'm worried about, just some of the language they're using in the assignments, man, we'll drive out to the house. We'll check it out. Hey, you doing okay? We just want to check in on you. And I'd rather them say, yep, everything's good. Everything's fine. And all right, have a good day. We'll see you tomorrow.
So let me throw this out to the wider group then, because one of the questions I always try to, I think one of the valuable pieces of these conversations is, what are we going to take away from this for next year? I mean, we're almost done with this year. This year is not the way we wanted it to go, and we're all making it up as we go along, kind of. But we're going to hopefully get back in the fall, hopefully have a room full of kids. What are we learning here that we're going to be able to apply then? What do you guys think? Somebody want to volunteer an idea?
I'll volunteer. I really like the framework that we looked at. I think it's awesome. I just see it as another kind of like SEL tool in my toolbox to use for next year. But I was thinking about the video conferencing stuff, and I will tell you guys, I think video conferencing is such a great tool that we could use. I've done it. I teach an AP class of 9 people, and it's fantastic. We WebEx every week, and we are discussing these needs. I mean, it's great. But again, they feel comfortable with me and their 9 peers, So yeah. I'm curious if people have done some video conferencing with bigger classes, with like our 30 classes. Classes of 30 or more, and what that looks like. I've been a little afraid to do it with my freshmen, my kind of on-level freshmen. So I don't know. John, have you tried it, or has anybody else?
Not that big of a group, no. I I've had some open-ended times where people bang, kind of bopped in, bopped out, but nothing that large. And WebEx, I don't know. I mean, it's a neat little platform, but I don't know if we've got something set wrong because it never seems to be really stable when I've been on it, but I don't know. That would be interesting.
I don't know.
Go ahead, Carrie. Go ahead.
My thought, if this becomes a new normal or if we wave in and out of virtual learning, is it something that maybe as a new procedure with kids almost having a safe word that it's a unified, like across the board, that if this safe word is used, then we know that you're needing help at home and that you can't ask for it in front of your parents because maybe your parents are what you're scared of. But that's such a fine line to walk, when you have kids under the age of 18, like teaching them a safe word that you're not teaching their parents. Mm-hmm. But just an idea to throw out there, how do they ask for help when they're under the scrutiny of who is causing them harm?
Mm-hmm. That's good. And I wonder too if maybe and I think Teresa was getting ready to say something. I think part of this too is just, I think we're always aware while we have kids in front, but I think maybe now this is kind of saying you need to have more of these conversations with our students, hallways, before class, lunchroom, whatever. Maybe we just need to reach out more, and it's not even if it's like the horrible, huge stuff, just that kind of general kind of, just kind of staying on that. I think we need to have these conversations more often.
John, I think, go ahead. Go ahead.
It's Teresa. I was just going to jump in when you asked earlier, something to take into next year. These 6 categories are wonderful. I work with special needs kids in the middle school, and they are changing from kids to young adults, and they are going through so much. And as teachers, we have to look at every part of their life. And I keep reminding my teachers now as they're and I complain too, they're not getting their work in, and I'm trying to contact them and get their work in. But more importantly than that, I know that I have kids at home whose parents aren't working. They're worried about food in their house. I'm sure they're hearing arguments. Are bills getting paid? Education is not their top priority right now. And is it a priority? Yes. Does it need to be a priority? Yes. But we have to address these other areas in their lives if we want to be relevant to them and them to value what we have to give to them.
True. Farrell, what were you getting ready to say?
Well, going back to what you were originally saying there, when you started this question, what's going to happen in August when we come back and things are quote unquote back to normal, if that even does exist? I feel like we as the teachers are going to understand the importance of the non-contingent attention that we give our kids. That, hey, how you doing? How are things going? That 30 to minute and a half conversation that we have with our classes before we get into the bell ringer or however we start our classes, we're going to understand just how valuable and how rich that time and that energy goes into those conversations really can be with connecting with our kids.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Can I maybe add something real quick?
Yeah.
just a thought, and this is maybe something that you're already doing as well. Would maybe even be sort of letting kids know that I have sort of in office hours, like a time from say like 11 to noon or 10 to 1 or whatever, where you can sort of kind of be present of like if they needed to like check in or text or get on video Skype or whatever that is. Because sometimes I think it's a matter of I'm going to send this out there in the interwebs and I don't know when they're going to get that, or I don't know when they're going to respond to that, or but something that can sometimes offer a little bit more sort of in the immediate. And then if something is bigger and needs a little bit more time, you might say, whenever this time shuts down for everybody else, can I call you back, or can I contact with you, sort of one-on-one, and then kind of dive in a little bit deeper that way. Just as an idea. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And, I know we've been reading a lot of it. This keeps popping up on Facebook and Twitter and everything. Parents are sitting at home with their kids now, and they're like, wow, I didn't even know, I didn't know this about my kids or whatever, and us teachers are like, yeah, we could have told you that. I'm wondering now if we're kind of really seeing more of the role that teachers play to be that, first line of defense with some of these kids. when it comes
I
to
think that's
emotional
true,
learning?
John. I think that's true, but I also think that I mean, I'm thinking about this from the perspective of my own kid and whatnot too, but I'm from an educator's perspective, I wonder if we won't also be more aware of the fact of the role that of all these different needs, right? Play, because I mean, I came from a high school background, ELA, my lens was high school ELA, and it was not always easy for me to fully understand the roles, the roles of all the different, letters in the acronym in a kid's life. I mean, I felt like I was an empathetic teacher and that I tried to, build relationships with my students. But I wonder if we won't be more aware of the gap that maybe we had ourselves too.
I think you're very, yeah, I think so. I think maybe is this putting a better focus on things?
Yeah, it feels that way to me. It feels like we're all becoming a little bit aware of what parts of the system weren't working and what parts were, in a way. Like we know what we miss, and we also are aware of some of the things that we've gained having been removed from the system.
Yes, definitely so. Hey guys, let's do parting shots here, because I'm getting ready to run here. You guys are still more than welcome to hang out as long as you want. Andrew, parting shots.
Yeah, I mean, I want to say, I have the utmost respect for all of you and what you're doing, and what we're all doing is not easy. I think that it's great that we can sort of reach out sort of across disciplines, and have this opportunity to sort of dialogue and to sort of hear some of the things that you were talking about. So much, what's so uplifting to me is to just hear so much of, and then talking about how we sort of recognize that human connection, how we need that, how vitally important that is in those check-ins, in those keeping up with one another's. I think that would be, and I think that's a great way to do that. And this message of spices and needs, again, it's so universal, getting it out there, and some sort of, public announcement with students or whatever. I mean, this was, lots of different things. So I think there's a lot of different ways that we can go and use this. So that's awesome.
Anyone else want to throw in some parting shots? Anybody else? Well, listen, I appreciate this, guys, because I know that, it's great to be with other, adults and talking about adult things and professional things. I love that. And I totally appreciate you jumping in here and having this conversation with us, and to be able to share those ideas. So I really do appreciate all this. And I hope you guys got a little bit out of this and you've got something to work with moving forward. And Andrew, I want to thank you for joining us tonight. I know you took a lot of time out of your life, and there may be a mama downstairs waiting for you to come downstairs and take over.
Yeah.
Excellent. Hey guys, thanks so much. I'm going to get out of here. See you guys.
All right. See ya.